Hello and welcome to another video. In this video I'm going to be talking about management and self-management of your own buy-to-let properties or your own investment properties. I'm going to tell you what I've done personally for the last 6 years and how that's worked out for me, and what I'd recommend also with the pros and the cons of self-management or giving your management of your investments to an estate agent. Okay, so let's get into the pros and cons of either self-managing or giving your investment property to an estate agent. So the first one is money versus time. The advantage and the pro is obviously that you're going to see more money every single month and every single 12 months. And of course, if we're looking at on a small scale, one property, say where I invest, you could be paying £45–50 a month, but you could be in London and that £50 could be over £100. So if you look at that over the course of sort of 3 or 4 properties, that number really does add up. But the con is obviously your time. So you might have one property which gives you no maintenance throughout the whole year, but then another 2 which a few things go here and there. So it is really your money versus your time. They're the 2 things that you're weighing up. Second con is stress. It can be stressful sometimes if you're working on another business or you're doing something else with your career and property is just on the side, but you're self-managing and you're having phone calls about door handles coming off and windows breaking and glass breaking, and you don't want to be dealing with that sort of thing. It is obviously going to be a little bit stressful, as opposed to if the agent's dealing with that, they will just be calling you to say, we're going to sort the problem out, this is how much it's going to cost, and you just have to pay the bill and you don't have to go anywhere. Third one, I'm going to say personal touch. So I like to go to each one of my properties at least as a minimum once a year, because tenants could, the way it works is people get comfortable in their house, they think there's no issues, and things could be ignored if it's a little bit of damp in the corner of the room, a little bit of condensation, or window's got a little crack on it, or there's a few handles which don't really work. If you get there yourself once a year, or if you're self-managing and you have a handyman who you can get to do this even better, and you can keep up on the maintenance of the property, as opposed to if someone's in there for 2 or 3 years and then no one goes in there and you think everything's fine just because your rent's coming in perfectly fine, and then you get in there and you have to end up spending a few £1,000s because there's so many maintenance issues which have just been ignored. And this could happen with an agent. If an agent is managing your property, things could be missed, because yeah, I don't know, you need to trust other people, of course. Obviously, like I said, I personally only had an agent for that first initial year, then I've done everything else myself. But I think you even need to have a good relationship with your agent, and if you're getting them to go to your property, maybe where you invest is not local, and they can give you a run through. But obviously when it's your own place, you're a lot more invested, and there's a lot more sort of detail that you'll sort of look at in regards to the maintenance of the property. So I think what it comes down to is your time versus money, really. Depending on what else you're doing in your life, if you have the time, it's a personal preference at the end of the day. So when I look at, I currently manage 4 properties with 4 tenants, which was 7 tenants recently, but 2 lots moved out who were 2 couples, and now there's just 2 single individuals in there. And it is very manageable. I don't really intend to have 1,000 properties that I manage myself, because that's not where I see myself going. But 6 years ago, if you asked me the question, oh, would you manage sort of 5–6 places, this many tenants, I probably would have been a bit like, oh, I don't know, because I don't know how that's going to go. But once you do one and it goes quite smoothly, you realise you can just replicate that with 2, 3, 4 or more. So I feel like in terms of the way I manage my own portfolio, I'll try and get it to a stage where I can maybe offset 3 or 4 to an agent and keep another 2 or 3, and we can sort of work it out like that. But no, definitely not looking to manage hundreds of tenants and hundreds of properties myself, because that would just take up way too much of my time. In terms of what I've done management wise, let's just rewind back to 2017. That's when I bought my first buy to let. simple 1-bed ground floor flat, and obviously this was my first property. I was a little bit apprehensive about if I wanted to manage it myself. Did I know what to do? X, Y, and Z. So I thought, do you know what? Because it's the first one, let's give this to the estate agent for the first year and then assess how those 12 months go, what I paid them, how their service is, any issues I have during that period, and then I can assess it at the end and decide what direction I want to go in. So 12 months went by. In terms of any sort of issues that happened, my boiler actually broke in that property after the tenant being in there for about 2 weeks, but the boiler was really, really old. Put in a nice new one, and I've still got that boiler in there today, and yeah, that hasn't given me any issues since. So apart from that, that whole 12 months was very, very easy for that estate agent. They collected about 7% off of me. The rent was $650 per calendar month, and yeah, they took about 7%, which was around sort of £45–50. And at the end of the year, I just thought, wow, I kind of looked at what I paid them for what they'd done, and they didn't have to do anything. Essentially, I realised a lot of people have their properties managed just for the peace of mind, but what they don't realise is peace of mind, you could see 500, 600 or more in your bank from you actually not even doing anything. Potentially you need to answer the phone every now and then for very minute maintenance issues. But yeah, basically after the 12 months I said, okay, do you know what, I'm going to give this a crack myself. So the rest is history really. After the end of that first tenancy, every property that I've acquired and rented out, I've managed that myself. So the process I actually go through, I still work with the estate agents. I obviously, after purchasing and doing all the work to the property, I give the specification to the estate agent, and now obviously I've worked with the same 2 or 3 agents for the last 6 years, so they know the exact demographic of tenant I'm looking for, which is young professionals, and they'll find the tenant. They'll do all the credit checks, look at their history in terms of salary, speak to any past landlords or estate agents in terms of referencing. They'll draw the contracts up, and once we're both happy, they'll put the tenant into the property. I do the check-in 9 times out of 10. If I can't make it, they'll do it and we'll sort something out. And then essentially I'll manage the properties from there, and that's worked out really well for me. So I've actually done the maths on my properties, and if I had everything managed at a rate of around sort of 7%, I would be paying about £3,600 a year, which is a lot of money, because if you add that up over 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, you're talking about deposits for new houses, or you're talking about money for work to keep up the maintenance of the properties. But look, at the end of the day, what this comes down to is how much time you want to spend on managing your portfolio. I found personally, because I've been heavily involved on every single project, and I know where everything is, and I know all the builders who have worked on all of my projects, everything has been done to a good standard, no corners cut. The management and the maintenance has been quite minimal. So obviously things like boilers breaking, that is just common. Boilers don't last forever. Things like door handles on doors and handles on windows, that is just general sort of wear and tear. You're going to get scuff marks on the walls, etc. But my personal experience, the management and the maintenance of my properties have been quite minimal, and I feel like that's a big tip that I can give you, is if you have the projects and your investment properties done to a good standard, and you don't get cheap builders in, and everything is done properly, the maintenance should be very minimal, very minimal. Now, I'm going to give 3 tips now to leave you with. So tip number 1 is be super fussy about your tenant. Tell your agent the demographic that you're looking for and who you're not looking for, because it's your property at the end of the day. Your money is heavily invested in that asset and you want it to last as long as possible. Number 2, have a spreadsheet with your yearly checks that need to be done on the property. And number 3, make sure you check in with your tenants on a regular basis to make sure everything is all good and they're happy with everything and everything is running as it should be, and also visit your property at least once a year. Okay, thank you for tuning in to another video. I hope you like that one. Don't forget to comment and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.